The Buddhists talk about the wheel of life, and essentially that's a metaphor for understanding that life continuously moves. It's always changing. Think about the most famous person that you can ever think of, and if they die, nothing stops, right? The entire thing continually goes on. No matter how big that person is, nothing stops. The wheel continues to move. And it's actually impermanent because it always changes. Everything's always changing. And essentially the only security that we really have is that life is insecure, that it is impermanent. And if we can base our security on the fact that it's all going to change, it's a lot easier when it changes. Easier said than done, of course, because we are creatures of habit. We like things to be structured, but life always changes. And that's a great thing because we have the opportunity to expand into the change. But the wheel also can be seen as where you are on the wheel in terms of the spoke between the center and the edge of the wheel. Where you are there determines how life will show up for you. So if you're on the edge of the wheel where there's a lot more wind, right? You're on the outside, there's a lot more movement. And essentially what that means is that you're engaged in outer world reality. Your your relationships are with the outer world. You're doing life, engaging in outer world activities more than inner world introspection. And so essentially less spiritual work on the outside world. And the more you're involved in that type of reality, the more unstructured your inner world is. And the more dramatic things are, because you're right on the edge of the wheel. So things are going up and you're affected tremendously by the outside world, by what goes on in the outside world. And when you're in that space, you are essentially a victim to circumstance, because you're so involved in outer world realities that you're not recognizing that your inner world is actually at cause. Your inner world is creating the outer world. And so, of course, the best place to be is further down the spoke on that wheel. So if you can get into the center or close to the center of that wheel, life's a lot easier because all of that stuff's going on around you, but you're at the center, so the movement is very small. Whereas if you're on the edge, you're being flown all over the place, and that's essentially the understanding of what's happening in your mental understanding of yourself and life when you're in the dramas of the outside world. So the more work you can do in the inner world, the more chance you have of pulling yourself down to that central place. And so it's something that we can do daily to center ourselves, right? And that's a metaphor you can use, that when you're in the dramatizing life, when all the stuff's going on and you find yourself in anguish somehow or in stress, then you're on the outside of the wheel. Now, of course, you have to recognize that you're on the outside of the wheel to be able to pull yourself back to the center. So that's the first part of the formula, let's put it that way, that you have to recognize, oh, I'm in drama here because what's going on seems to be causing anxiety or stress. So I'm in a dramatic place internally. Remember, it's only going on for you, even though you might feel justified that it's going on the way it's going on. The fact is, if you're in a drama, you're on the outside of the wheel, you're involved in the outside world stuff, and you're not centered. And to be able to change it quickly, you want to get centered where you're stopping. The stuff that happened, but you're at your center, right? So you can recognize yourself a lot easier because you're at your center. You're right here. And so how do we do that? Well, essentially, I find there's two ways to center myself, to pull myself off the drama. Remember, the drama is always going on in the mind. It's always going on in thought. Thought about life is what life is for all of us. There's a thought, and whatever we think anything is what life is for us. So your entire life is thought and felt. That's what it is all the time. Now, That's why meditation is so beneficial, because it teaches us to come off the thought, off the drama, and watch the moment. And that's what it means to be centered. So if you're meditating every day, you can get centered that way. That will happen naturally because you're genuinely, authentically pulling yourself off the brainwashed drama stuff every day until it becomes easier for you to pull yourself off it. But if you're not meditating every day, there's still a couple of easy ways to do it. And the first one is you can just take your attention to what the Chinese call the dantian, or you can just behind your navel. So you bring your attention to navel and you look at it. And you keep looking there. You could put your hand around the navel area and bring your attention to it. Center yourself. Take a few deep breaths. When we're stressed, we're breathing in shallow and fast. When we're calm and peaceful, we're breathing deep and slow. So simply by taking slow, that wasn't so slow, but it's the slower the breath you can take, the more you'll calm down. Then you put your hand on the central point behind the navel. Not behind the navel, your attention is behind the navel, but your hand is on the navel, and you recognize that there's an energy force there because you're putting attention there. And if you breathe deeply and slowly, you'll calmly and gently come into the moment. And then, of course, when we're centered, we get inspired thought. We get to see what to do. We're calm, we're balanced. We're not in the drama. We can look at the situation and move forward. Now, the other place to center self, which I find even more powerful, is simply putting your hands on the heart chakra. The heart chakra is in the center of your chest. Chakra means energy point. It means actually spinning wheel, but it's an energy point. And if you just put your hands on your heart chakra, so you're over the center of your chest, and do the same. You put your attention there. You could even imagine a sun of light behind your hands and focus on that. And again, you breathe slowly and deeply, as slowly and deeply as you can without it being difficult for you. But you slow your breathing down, because when you're on the edge of the wheel and it's dramatic, breathing is faster and more shallow. And so the deeper we breathe and the slower we can breathe, the easier and more peaceful our system comes. It's the quickest way to get centered, the breath. And then putting your attention either on the dantian or the heart chakra will bring you into a centered place, and then you can see clearly. Then you can recognize, actually, I'm here. Everything's okay in this moment. Yes, there's something to deal with possibly, but I'm centered here. And the chance of you getting an inspired thought or a solution to the challenge is much more expanded. It's much greater because you're centered. You're coming from a balanced place. Have an absolutely fantastic day when you watch this. I look forward to talking to you again next time. Thank you so much.